Hello, friends. Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. Senator Phil Perry alongside the indispensable cameraman Glenn Gleason behind the lens. Mike Vrabel had his pre-draft press conference. I didn't have something ready, so
that was good. Very Butler Cabin, Jim Nance-esque. The whole thing was great.
Mike Vrabel had his pre-draft press conference today. Pre-draft for the ages. Mike Vrabel. What? I don't know. I was starting with Jim Nance. It's just a goon. Sorry. Let's get to the football. You people didn't sign up for this. This is not what your subscription is supposed to provide.
We're still going. I love this.
I know. Yeah.
Great.
So Vrabel today, speaking on a variety of things. Let's jump to a few, I think, of the more interesting comments. And I thought the most interesting answer was Phil's pointed question about whether or not you can get a left tackle who can start for you in this draft at number 4. Simple, but sometimes you ask a simple question to get the explicit answer.
I think there's some starting tackles that certainly will come in and start in the NFL. And I think that's, really what you start to look for, right, as impact players when you start picking that high. What they're going to do for you, what's the impact, what's the position. You talk about premium position, and so then that's where you kind of weigh all the circumstances and end up, making that pick. So do I think that there's starters in this draft at left tackle? Yes, I do.
So Mike Vrabel says a couple of tackles. Could it be a few? And who are they, Phil?
I think it could be a few, but it depends on where you're talking about in the draft. And the lower you go, the less certain you are that you can get one of those starters that Vrabel's talking about. I think there's more than 2, for instance, to take his words literally.
You got M'Bu, you got Campbell,
I would put Campbell and M'Bu at the top of the list. And I think for different reasons, right? One guy you've seen play left tackle, 2,600 snaps in the SEC. One guy is a freaky athlete. Campbell's a pretty freaky athlete too. Don't undersell his athleticism. But M'Bu has the higher ceiling, is what I've been told. But you're projecting because you have to flip them from right to left. Then the later you go, you're talking about guys like Josh Connerly from Oregon. I've talked to evaluators in the league, Tom, that are in the tackle market right now, and they don't love his athleticism, and they don't love his power as a run game player. But he seems to actually hold up pretty well against power as a pass protector, which is interesting. Do they like
his nastiness or the cut of his football jib? Because I think that's really critical.
I don't know if they love it when it comes to Connerly. Now, I'm talking to someone that is not a member of the Patriots organization, so I just want to point that out. They may feel differently. But I don't think that's necessarily his MO. I think his MO is left tackle, played a lot of left tackle, good enough feet and good enough power as a pass protector, but you might have to wait a while for him to be the kind of run blocker that you'd really fall in love with.
When you look at the left tackles the Patriots have had since 2000, the notable ones, you had one who was a nasty, intelligent, decent athlete, undersized mauler in Matt Light. Just a nasty prick.
Call it what it is.
Very good athlete, very, very tough, very smart, great character guy. People loved him. Then you go with a 6'8" freak of genetics in Nate Solder, one of the nicest humans you could ever meet.
No question.
Versatile, but got the job done at an extremely high level.
Prototype.
Because of the God-given genetics and the athleticism
and intelligence,
and the intelligence.
Coachability. Yep.
Yeah, but you went from a non-prototype to a prototype, and then you went to Trent Brown, who's probably a better mix of athlete and prototype than the other two, but did not have the engine that hummed along at all times, which is why he was a 7th-round pick, which is why he only had snapshots of time as the best tackle in the league. So when I look at it, what does Mike Vrabel look for in a tackle? I don't give a shit what Elliot Wolf looks for in a tackle because he wouldn't know one if it walked into him and slapped him in the forehead with a rolled-up newspaper.
Might be a little strong.
Well, I'm just going on recent history. Vrabel's going to look at Matt Light. He's going to look at brawlers and maulers and nasty humans. Will Campbell's got that.
He does. And I think he's got it in ways that M'Bu does not.
Okay.
Quite frankly, just from what I've been told. So I think that's another maybe check in Will Campbell's favor. And are they okay living with the arm length? And would they be okay, Tom, And I think history would suggest that Vrabel would be kicking him inside the guard if it doesn't look great at tackle. If he goes out in spring practices or he goes out first week of training camp and he's losing consistently to Keon White on the edge or Harold Landry.
Just can't catch. You know what? It's such a tough matchup because the only thing you see when you see Harold Landry line up, and he lined up mostly on the right side when he was the offensive right side.
Okay.
My God, he's breathtaking. Ooh, I spit everywhere. I was so excited. Breathtakingly fast. Okay, thanks a lot there, Sylvester.
Unbelievable. Can we just get to the draft already? Holy smokes. Yes.
Just straight coffee breath and spitting.
But my point is, if it looks that way, and I don't think it will, I just want to be clear in saying that, I think he'd be a pick that the Patriots should be comfortable with at 4.
Those are tough matchup guys to watch in practice.
Yeah, I think it would be telling. And if it doesn't go well, would they say, well, we got a great guard? Because they took a guard in the top half of the first round a couple years ago in Tennessee, Peter Skoronski. Even shorter arms than Will Campbell. Like, he's more Joe Tooney sized. And it didn't even really feel like they gave him a chance at tackle. They took him with a very valuable pick, but they liked the person, they liked the player, and they said, hey, guard's an important position too, so we're okay taking that in the top half of the first round. So let's do it.
The Patriots took a guard in 2022 in the first round. They also re-signed a guard last offseason to an extremely lucrative contract. Neither one qualifies as a Pro Bowl level player. They just don't have enough good players. Moving on. I asked Vrabel how aggressive they would be or whether they would kind of let the draft come to them. And this answer, not that revelatory, but I think it's important because to ask it at least because they need to make things happen. They need 5 players, in my estimation, from this draft. They have 4 from the last 2 drafts who you would consider good players. Not great, not Pro Bowl level, good. That's White, Keon, Gonzalez, all-pro player, Drake May, and Demario Douglas. From the previous 3 drafts combined, 7 players from 20 to 2023. And that includes your Stevensons, your Duggars, your Onwenus,
Barmore,
Cole Strange, Barmore, and a couple others. You could throw Booty and Barringer in there if you want to from the last 2 years. But that's like 48 players, and they've got 11 who can play. None of whom, except for Gonzalez and May, you would say, wow, someday you might put them in the NFL's top 100 for NFL friggin' films, whatever it is.
Boy, and that's a low bar. I thought you were going higher than that.
No,
but
it's a
you're
low
right.
bar.
I think you're right. I would agree with you on that front.
So that's why I asked that question of Vrabel. Here's his answer.
I don't know if you can answer that. I think we always, when we coach the football team, we ask the players to play. We want them to be aggressive. We don't want them to be reckless. There could come a time, and I think there's a lot of possibilities. There could be players that maybe we covet on the board that are there at a certain point, and we have to determine, how far we are away from where that player is, and that'll be the same thing when you talk about trading back. Like, how far do you want to trade back? Are there still going to be players there that you want at that particular level? So I think we all have experience enough doing that, of going up and going back and presenting. Every time you pick, there's probably are we going to stick and pick, or what's the best offer that we have? And that's the role of the personnel staff, is to kind of field those calls as they come in. And sometimes they're good offers, and sometimes they're not so good offers.
Great question posed to, I think it was Ben.
Can I ask you really quickly?
Yeah.
Do you believe him when he says he's not sure, or they're doing their simulations still, in response to your question?
Well, it's funny. I don't think that you believe it, so I'm going to lob it back to you.
No, I listen. There are a lot of. I don't know. That's why I ask.
You know what you almost have to do is simulate who would come up and ask us for to trade.
So that is one thing that could expand the range of possibilities, right? With what you do with that first pick is the trades, whether it's New Orleans or say Pittsburgh wants to fly way up and give you future picks and this, that, and the other. So there's a multitude of paths there when it comes to trade. There's a multitude of paths with your second pick, depending on what you do with the first pick. So while we sit here and say, oh, there's only got to be call it, to be generous, 6 players they're considering at 4. Should we try to rattle them off? Will Campbell, Armand Membu, Tyler Warren, your guy.
Jalen
Walker, okay. Would you put Tet McMillan in there?
No.
I don't think I would either.
Maybe Ginty just to have the conversation.
Maybe Ginty just to talk about it.
5. It's 5.
Is it 5?
It's 5 guys, and that's a stretch. And the cool thing about those guys...
But that shouldn't take, my point is that shouldn't take all that long. If you got 5 guys there at 4, depending on if there are 2 quarterbacks taking the top 3 or not, that part of the simulation shouldn't take much time, but it's the stuff that comes after that or the trades that could lead to a lot of different mock drafts in these offices.
The only other thing would be, what are we doing if Travis Hunter's there? What are we doing if Abdul Carter's there? So those questions would be other simulations, but it is interesting when you look at those 5 guys we mentioned.
Yeah.
4 of whom seem like absolute friggin' Eagle Scout, exactly what you want for your football team. So that's going to be encouraging. And I don't know enough about Memba. We might be better than all of them. End up on Mount Rushmore by the time when he retires. 5 heads.
Played band in high school and soccer, I think. A little bit of a latecomer to the game, so I think that's why you might project a little bit more upside.
Well, he's like Stephen Neal.
Mason Graham. Mason Graham would be the 6th.
Oh, yeah.
We got to include him.
Thank you for doing research. I thought you were looking at your phone.
I knew we were forgetting somebody, but that's the guy.
Question posed by Ben Volen. Was it Ben? About good guys, bad guys, leave them alone?
Mike Giardi, I believe.
Oh, even better. Giardi asked about good guys and bad guys.
Maybe both. Sorry. Not sure.
Either way, he was asked about, could you have some real shitheads on the team?
High premium on high character guys in free agency, also good football players.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the most important thing, but yes.
So does that translate to the draft, or do you feel like because you brought in guys like Morgan Moses, maybe you can take a risk in the draft because you feel like your locker room's strong?
Well, we don't want to take risks. I mean, we want to be aggressive. I think there's a difference between taking risks and being aggressive and adding quality players and people to the roster. That'll happen throughout player acquisition. I think that's something that's important, but certainly the talent of the player, has to be evaluated first, and then you go through a lot of different exercises and conversations and to try to figure out the type of person. But you can't win and you can't do what we want to do with just a bunch of good dudes. That's not going to get it done.
So, as is our wont, WONT at NBC Sports Boston, we immediately seized on the notion that, so he wants a bunch of dinks. No, he doesn't want a bunch of dinks. He just doesn't want every tiebreaker to be, this guy will drop everything to help an old lady across the street. It's just, you can't have a bunch of guys who are sorry, I'm just, you know what I'm saying? It can't be the tiebreaker on everything.
No, it can't. And we've seen that in the past here where I think guys have been pushed way up the board because Bill Belichick liked their personalities. Jordan Richards in the 2nd round. Did that make sense as a pure football decision? Probably not, but I'll never forget Bill Belichick coming to the podium and telling us how much we were going to like Jordan Richards. I can't remember him ever saying that about another player. Or caring, exactly.
And ironically, as it turned out, Jordan Richards didn't even look at us.
He wasn't that helpful.
He was not helpful.
I'm sure he was great in the community and, did all that sort of stuff. But
Bill did, and that was a complete aberration. Other than that, every other 2nd-round pick that he blew was just nonsensical. It wasn't Jonathan Wilhite. Who was the guy he took in the 2nd round?
Tavon Wilson?
No, he was actually not horrible. Jonathan Wilhite. There was another.
Cyrus Jones?
Cyrus Jones.
A lot of DBs in the 2nd round.
Cyrus Jones, Joanne Williams.
Wheatley?
Duke Dawson. No, there was another guy they took the same year as Wilhite.
Oh, Jawan Williams. No, sorry, but Jawan Williams is a good
there was
example,
another
too.
corner the year Wilhite went. Wilhite was a 4th, and I always forget the guy who was taken in the 2nd.
Was that 09?
I think it was Wheatley.
Darius Butler?
I think it was Wheatley.
Maybe it was Wheatley. I think Wheatley was a 2nd round
Just horrendous track record. Be that as it may. It's not a Patriots Talk podcast if I don't get a swipe at Bill.
But your point about the 6 names that we just talked about, a lot of those being, those high-end character guys. I think Mason Graham fits that bill. Tyler Warren fits that bill. Ashton Genty, Jalen Walker for sure does. Will Campbell for sure does. Armand Membu, I think, is a good dude. I've never heard anything bad about him. And so, should that be the tiebreaker? I thought he went out of his way to me, though, Tom, today to say, in interrupting Mike Giardi's question at one point, obviously you want to get good football players, Mike, and he goes, that's the most important thing. Interrupted. So, and they just had a guy in here who has some character questions following him into the draft, and that would be Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter, from what I've been told, elite, burst, elite, speed off the edge, elite bend. He's getting Von Miller comparisons from coaches and scouts who have met with him extensively and scouted him closely. You probably should take that in the top 5 if it's available to you. However, there are other issues with his game that these evaluators see, i.e. he's not great against the run. And it's not because he can't be. It's because they don't see a lot of want to there on first and second down. He's not deemed as maybe the most Eagle scouty of this crop of draft picks. There's going to be a little less selflessness there with him than there might be with others. It doesn't make him a bad guy. It just, makes him a pass rusher in the NFL, probably, yeah. Tom, quite frankly. So are you willing to pull the trigger on a player like that because he is so talented? And I think if we're just taking Mike Vrabel at his word here today, I think they would be, because he's that special physically where you might just look at it and say, hey, they can't all be Eagle scouts. Let's just move forward with a guy that plays a premium position that we know is going to be damn good.
If you go back to back with Christian Gonzalez, Drake May, and Abdul Carter, and they all end up living up to what we've seen early on from those two guys that are in the league and what Abdul Carter is projected to do, you got a nice core. And we're not going to beat a dead horse here, okay? You guys are going to listen to the Vrabel stuff. We've already talked about it. You can look at our website. I'm actually pretty hungry, and I'm running a low blood sugar situation here. And I'm sure you guys can understand that. So we're going to pull the plug on this. Later in the week, you're going to have some fun. I polled myriad media members about what the Patriots will do and what they should do at number 4. Okay? Then we're going to ask you guys. We're going to crowdsource it. Phil's going to do that next week. We'll read through some of them. I don't know if we'll do that. All right, see ya.